Hey, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. I just got off the California Delta, spent the day out there power fishing, and got to thinking, this can be a tough transition. This switch from the spawn going into those early summer patterns, a lot of people just get disoriented, kind of lose where the fish are, and it can be difficult to find them again. But this is also one of the best times of year for power fishing, for going out there and just hammering down, throwing baits, looking for those big bites. So I thought I'd run you through the top 5 baits that I like to throw during this transitional period. The first one, the swim jig, is a bait that I just absolutely love. I've talked about it a lot over the years, but the big difference during this transitional time is that I'm not throwing my typical heavy swim jig. A lot of the times I'm not even using the California swim jig. I drop down to dirty jigs, just standard swim jig. 3/8. A lot of the time I'll even go down to quarter if that grass is really coming up in the water column. And then depending on which one I'm throwing, I'll match it with a Kitech trailer. For the 1/4 ounce, I'll use the 3.8. For the 3/8 ounce, I'll go to the 4.3. That seems to be the best match to get the right action out of that bait, keep it kicking. But that can just be deadly as that grass is coming up going into summer. Next bait is going to be the square bill. The square bill is such a staple from coast to coast, and that post spawn, again, that grass is starting to come up in most of our lakes. Just a deadly bait for covering water. Your shad are starting to come up to spawn after the bass. If you're in a lake full of shad, they'll just hammer on that. But even if you're not, it's a great bait to fish in and around that grass, draw that reaction bite. Next, it's going to be the Fluke. That's probably your best transition bait overall. I like the actual Zoom Super Fluke, but everybody has their own personal preference. But the Fluke is just such a deadly bait. You can fish it on the grass, around the grass, completely open water. Out here on the Delta, we've got all the tules and laid down wood and all these different things. And the Fluke is just a bait that will fish around all of that. Take those lethargic post-spawn fish that are just lounging around. When that bait's really darting and cutting, just draws that hard reaction bite. Tim just did a video on how to fish those aggressively. Down in the description, we'll put a link to that. But just a deadly, deadly springtime going into summer bait. Then after that, come up to the surface, start throwing topwater. The 2 categories that I like most, one is going to be your buzzbait or buzzbait style baits. I'll either throw a buzzbait or a whopper plopper. I actually really like the whopper plopper. It's just got that unique sound. I like all 3 sizes. But that bait, if you don't have a lot of grass, you just can't compete with it. It's such a silly looking bait out of the water. But when you get that thing in the water and the fish start eating it, it's unbelievable. And then the buzzbait itself, such a staple. Color-wise, I'm not too picky. Just like my frogs, I'll throw white, black, and chartreuse. And I just rotate through them until I find the right one. But the buzzbait in and around that cover is just deadly. And the last but not least, probably my favorite bait. I'm going to throw it from now as the spawn is ending all the way into late fall, is the frog. Again, we all have our preferences. River to Sea Bullywah 2, the coppers, the snag proof Bobby's frog, all phenomenal baits. Everybody's got their preference. But again, I keep those colors really simple. A white base, a chartreuse base, and a black base. It's going to cover almost every scenario. The frog is just such a deadly bait because I can take it out to the Delta, I can fish it on the cheese, and then I can go to the riprap banks when the fish aren't under the cheese. I can walk it like it's a spook right down the rocks. Then I can go to the reservoir where they're busting shad out in 40 feet of water. You can throw it over the top and catch those fish too. I mean, it's such a versatile bait. I will have at least 1 frog tied on, usually 2 or 3, on every single trip for the next 6 months. Such a deadly, deadly bait. But those 5 categories, I guess I'll say, I won't say 5 baits, 5 categories. The frog, the square bill, that light swim jig, the Fluke, and then your buzzbait or whopper plopper style bait. Those baits are the perfect baits for me to make the transition out of the spawn into the summer patterns, because the fish are going to react aggressively. They're going to come up hard on the baits. Even if they don't eat them, they're going to lash out. You're going to see that they're there, and that's going to help you make that summer transition. And then once you're on those fish, you just stick with them all summer long. I hope this helps. Good luck out there. Pay attention for a new video every week. If you like this one, subscribe. We'll talk to you soon. As hard as you can. So it's hard for a lot of guys to transition from that powerful hook set, heavy braided line, down to just a really finesse movement to get the frog to walk, but that's so important. So for me, I like a shorter rod. I generally use a 7'3" to a 7'6". For me, that's a short rod. For other people, they might want a 7-footer or something else, but a 7'3" seems to be perfect.